Hey everyone, it is Evan here from the Trade Risk on Tuesday, November 12th, here with a midweek market recap video. We're going to cover all of the major markets and the current market environment. So we're going to jump into our dashboard here. Markets finishing positive, a little bit mixed towards the end of the day, but it looks like everything eked out into positive territory to finish the day here on Tuesday. 5-day change numbers are slowing just a little bit. They've been strongly positive. You can see they're sort of weakening a little bit. IWM just turned negative over the past 5 days. We are still above all of the simple moving averages, those key simple moving averages, the 10, the 50, and the 200 SMA right across the board. And if we look down at sectors, we still have mostly green here across the board, but there are some more sectors that are starting to see a little bit of a give back from this recent rally that we've seen over the past 5 weeks. Technology leads on the top here, 1.73% over the past 5 days, followed by healthcare and materials. And on the downside, we have energy, we have utility, and we have transports as the underperforming over the past week. In terms of major markets, S&P is actually up in front here with a little over 0.5% over the past 5 days, followed by the dollar and high yield. Very interesting sort of mix up here for the top three. On the downside, you can see natural gas giving back a lot of its recent rally, followed by silver and volatility. So let's jump into the charts now. Let's take a look here at what's going on. We'll start off with a weekly time frame. We're not trying to analyze the weekly bars necessarily. We're just trying to get a picture, a sense of the big picture. And when we look here at the weekly time frame of the S&P 500, you can see, and this is something we talked about in our weekend recap video, that the S&P 500 just finished its 5th week in a row higher. So it had 5 weeks of forward progress. I believe the Qs had 6 weeks of forward progress. So basically 5-6 weeks of a, for better, for more or less, it was a nonstop sort of rally push to the upside. We're starting to see a little bit of kind of consolidation here. We're negative on the week so far, only Tuesday, of course, but we tried to push up earlier in the week. We kind of pulled back a little bit, and now we're kind of just meandering around here. All in all, though, when we look here at just the big picture of the S&P 500, we are at a new all-time high. We are just under those all-time highs. We broke out in October. Technically, this market remains very strong here from an intermediate term, from all the way up to a long-term perspective. In the short term, however, it's kind of the same thing we talked about on the weekend recap. We know that we're extended. We know that we're a bit frothy here, and the market has climbed and covered a lot of ground in short order. So I think in the short term, it is perfectly reasonable to expect some type of pause, whether it be sideways through time or maybe a quick rug pull or some pullback in price, even all the way back down to 3,027 to retest this October breakout level for really most of the markets, and individual stocks started to break out in October. It would be very reasonable to sort of come back down, retest those, and if this market is acting in its best kind of faith here for the bulls, then you would expect buyers to kind of show up and support those retests. So again, it's not a prediction, not saying this has to happen, but it's something that we should very much keep as in the realm of possibility here going forward. The other scenario, of course, is that this market just continues to melt up, that the market is kind of in a chase mode now, and if you weren't buying in here, if you weren't getting involved in here or getting quick on the breakout, you're now forced to sort of pay up at these higher sort of nosebleed levels, and the train has sort of left this station, and it's going to continue to grind higher into the holidays. That, of course, is the most bullish scenario, and that is something where, of course, we can keep an open mind out about as well. So going forward, really, we have an uptrend. We're just under these all-time highs. Technically, the trends are still up. We are overbought in the short term, but we know markets that are in strong trends like to stay overbought. And that's sort of the landscape. That's the dynamic that we're seeing right now, right across the board of all the equity markets. If we look at volatility, which we talked about in our past couple of videos, we can see that volatility has gotten a little bit of a pop off that $12 level. We almost made, remember we talked about this on Friday, almost made new year-to-date low close here for the VIX, and that was about it. We came in and we popped on Monday, and then we kind of settled back down here. So we're trading a little off of those lows there that we just recently made on Friday, 12.74, still very low historical reading here for the VIX, and it's near the year-to-date low for the year. If we go to the Russell 2000 next, we've been eyeing this market as well because of where it is positioned here. Remember, we've talked about this, so I won't go into great length, but this is a very technically important spot for the market. It has been here for the Russell 2000 over the past year. You can see that that it is just consolidating sideways through time. This is very bullish behavior right now. If we see some type of abrupt breakdown, then of course this turns a little more pessimistic. But as it looks right now, we had a 10% rally from the low end of the range to the high end of the range, and we are basically now and that rally occurred in as much of a straight line as you could imagine. And now we're seeing just a sideways walk to the right here, just through time. So if this turns into, another couple of days or another week of consolidating, and then this starts to make a move and starts breaking through 160, that of course would be the most bullish, optimistic scenario and outcome for this market. We'll see if that takes place, but right now we're getting that indecision right where we would expect it to. So this market is behaving technically very sound here, very textbook, and we'll see what this has in store for the rest of this week. The NASDAQ 100 looks very similar to, a little more optimistic in fact, than the S&P 500. It in fact still closed today at new all-time closing highs. You can see that this broke out in late October as well over this 196 area. It has continued to grind higher. It's stretched in the short term, so the same kind of thought process of at least planning for or preparing for a potential retest or a pullback here down to this 195 seems reasonable. Doesn't mean we have to get one, but that's something that as sort of risk managers we should be thinking about here with our positions. So all in all, that's basically a similar look to what we talked about on Friday. Market technically still very strong here on virtually all time frames, but we are short-term extended, so let's be aware of that. If we get into some other major markets, we'll go to TLT next, which is trying to catch its footing here. It had a very rough last week. If we look at the performance here of TLT last week, one of the worst of the year, was down 4%. If we look at what it's done this week, it's basically gone sideways. So it's trying to catch its breath, trying to stabilize here. Again, kind of pulling back in a very bigger, pullback pattern here, or broader pattern in the longer term time horizon. In the short term, the trend is just down. If we go to gold next, you can see gold here, very similar, had a rough last week, trying to stabilize this week. It's tried to turn positive here today. Looks like it did. It initially sold off a little bit further. It's trying to reverse down here. Maybe we have it kind of falling in this sort of channel here. Otherwise, though, this is very similar to TLT, kind of consolidating longer term. In the short term, that trend is lower. And not last but not least, but next up is silver. And this here also had a very rough last week, very, very big down week for silver last week, 7%. That's a big move for this for the commodity. If we look here back at a daily chart, you can see it's trying to stabilize here as well. So all of these have that kind of sort of snapback look in the very short term for TLT, for gold, and for silver. If we go to energy next, we look at USO here. You can see this is consolidating sideways. Again, kind of behaving very well, very textbook from a technical perspective. This $12 area, this has kind of been the top end of the range over the past 6 or 7 months. There's a lot of supply in this area, so it makes sense that the market's kind of taking its time here and digesting and waiting to see which way it ends up kind of tipping. And natural gas, this is the one that is getting a pretty strong move here from this basket. It had a lot of encouraging action here over the past 2 weeks as we saw the volume pick up, we saw the breakout, we started started to resolve back over $22. And just like that, natural gas is definitely a volatile instrument. Came down 5.5% yesterday on Monday with a gap lower to start off the week. Tuesday it was a little bit lower as well. So when we look here on the weekly picture for natural gas, you can see again still the volume that came in the past 2 weeks are very standout and notable levels, but certainly this abrupt give back is not something you want to see here. So kind of back in the penalty box. It's volatile. It looks like it's in play right now. So again, if you're a shorter term trader, maybe you have your focus here, but from a swing perspective, maybe this is kind of giving you the sign now again that this is still not really ready. A little kind of all over the place for any type of smooth trade to develop. So that's it. That's what we got for the midweek video. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. We do these every Tuesday and every Friday. Friday, we do some sector recaps at the end as well. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel or just check us out at thetraderisk.com. All the videos get published there. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back here tomorrow for some trade ideas during the market session.